Welcome to another episode of Shift with Elena Agad, where I'm joined by Kelly Hubble. She's the founder of Sage House. In this conversation, we explore how making invisible household tasks visible can improve relationships and quality of life. Kelly shares her personal experiences and offers practical tips, including a free quiz on her website that can help you identify and prioritize household responsibilities. And mind you, she's a mother of three, a wife, and a professional in tech as well. So she definitely has some experience in just managing all that workload, and she shares her tips and strategies how she does it, and it's honestly phenomenal. Together, we discuss the societal pressures to do it all, which actually we don't have to, as we find out in this episode, the importance of asking for help, and the benefits of outsourcing tasks to reclaim time and mental space. Kelly's insights highlight how outsourcing doesn't just save time, but also reduces mental load, freeing individuals to focus on what truly brings them joy. So tune in, discover these actionable steps, learn a whole lot about things that you might be wondering about when it comes to outsourcing household tasks and how it's so possible and doable for everybody, or at least most people, I would say. So check it out. As always, comment, share, give me your feedback, and until next time. Kelly, welcome to the Shift podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Me too, me too. Before we start recording, I was talking about the fact that your background is so soothing and all the neutral colors, and your website is amazing. And I'm gonna share it in the show notes so people can just go look at the nice flow of your website. But before they do that, let's have them get to know you a little bit more. Talk to me about your journey, how you started Sage House, and kind of just what brought you to that.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I'm so glad that the aesthetics of the website and they totally reflect my office. I think most working professionals, especially moms, need a little bit more zen in their life. So I'm happy to provide that. Anyone who needs more zen can totally go to my website. But yeah, I'm Kelly Hubble. I am the founder of Sage House. My path to getting to Sage House is, I'm actually like still very much in the early and beginning stages of it. I'm still working full time in technology right now. So I work in sales for a technology company. But Sage House was really born out of my hyper passion for helping busy professionals and moms to really create home systems and start to think about outsourcing the mental load.
Mm.
Um, and what I mean by the mental load is all of the things that we're doing to, keep ourselves and our households thriving. And so, what I found in being a full time working mom myself is that there are a lot of things I'm doing that don't necessarily need to be me. And once I kind of had that realization and that aha moment, I started to slowly, through using systems, take things kind of off my plate and off my partner's plate. And that has done some really amazing things for me in reclaiming my time and my sanity and, opening up really like the opportunity to even create Sage House.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also been really, positively impactful on my own marriage and relationship and just the overall time I have in feeling present with whatever I'm doing. So that's kind of what Sage House is and is trying to accomplish. So yeah.
Yeah. As you're speaking, I remember there was like a meme on Instagram, and or not a meme, it was like a video or one of those social media platforms. And it was like, as a woman, or, as they were talking about a woman in that particular case, but like as a woman, you have to, I have to wake up, I have to look great, I have to do my hair, I have to moisturize my skin, I have to drink plenty of water, I have to go to the gym, I have all, and it was like as a single person, and then it's
Yeah.
like, this is impossible. Like but then you add the family piece to it and it seems impossible. So,
Yes.
but yet it's, to your point, maybe it is about creating a system and support and so on, and not feel guilty about it. Now, I'm not a parent yet. I'm a step parent, but I don't have my own children, but I can imagine the guilt that maybe a lot of moms feel when they feel like when they need to outsource. Is that something you come across?
Yeah, I think it's exponential. I mean, you touch on a really important thing, which is that in our own culture, we have somehow gotten to a point of valuing um, being busy and valuing doing it all. And we say things to other moms that I think that like we don't even realize we're saying is like, oh, you're such a super mom. How do you do it all? And
Mm-mm.
that's like something that I really want to just completely do away with because while you think you're giving a compliment, like deep down what you're continuing to um like what you're continuing to cycle is this idea that we should be doing it all and
Mm.
that we like as a female as a more than more than ever, women are in dual income households. And so they're working. And not only are they working 40 hours a week or more in their role, but they're also taking on the second shift of, all of the household duties and tasks. And so we're now to a point where women are burnt out, they're stressed, they're overwhelmed, and we're continuing to perpetuate this do it all supermom culture. So I'm glad you touched on that. Like my whole goal is to really like stop that and normalize this concept of needing help and being okay with asking for help
Mhm.
and like building a village around yourself. There's like the saying of it takes a village to raise a child. And
Yeah.
like in a lot of different cultures, and that is still the case. Like people live close to family members and communities that really do support them. But that's not the case today. Today, 70% of of families are far away, an hour or more away from their family. And so it's hard for them to get the support that they need. And so what my suggestion is like find your village. You can build your village. You can create a village around yourself to support you and your family.
Yeah, no, I think it's super valid. I definitely grew up what felt like a village, but I also grew up in Russia, and and it's
Mm,
still very much like it's a cultural thing as well. Because when I moved to America when I was a kid, it's just there's a lot of cultural things, and the thing in America, that village is further apart, or sometimes it's almost non-existent. Versus in other, like I've lived in the Middle East, I've traveled through Asia, and there is that family feel, like almost like the grandparents are 90% time involved in the upraising of the grandchild.
mm,
So versus in America, you have not only are both people working full time, but then you don't have any other family member, and sometimes you have to put people with childcare, which is a whole other expenses and so
yeah.
on. And there's like other things that come into play. But I'm also curious, as you talk about, women kind of putting these, unrealistic expectations on ourselves. And it probably reflects a lot on the kids as well, because they feel that stress when you are burnt out, So it's like, it's kind of like put on your own oxygen mask before you put it on to others.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. No, I think that children are, whether we like to admit it or not, they're internalizing everything around them all the time, constantly. And I know I certainly did in my childhood. And, I grew up in a household where my mom did work, but she also took over the majority of the household duties when it came to that like second shift and the invisible labor. And, somehow, I'm not sure how, because we, lived on a near zero budget. My parents got divorced when I was 5 years old. And so really, my mom was a single parent raising four kids. And somehow she managed to like do it all, but also still find help. Like I remember we always kind of had babysitters around. Like, the high school girls down the block were sort of always over like being a mother's helper and like just there was extra hands. Um and I think like it's really, really important to, regardless of your budget, which I think is another like really important thing that we can talk about.
Mm,
Regardless of your budget, like, my goal, my mission with Sage House is to get moms and professionals who aren't necessarily moms yet, like you, like get you the support that you need and you deserve, regardless of your budget. Because truly and strongly believe that what's being asked of us today we can't shoulder it on our own. We can't even shoulder it really with like a partner, in my opinion. I mean, for me and my family, my husband also works full time and he runs his own small business. So he's an entrepreneur and there's a lot of demands on him and his time. And like, want him to pursue his passions too. Like we
Mhm.
all are people, we're human beings first. We have passions, we have desires. And I think it's okay to like really value your time and how you want to spend it. And I think it's okay to say, it doesn't have to be me. Like it doesn't have to be me that takes the car in for a service, like it doesn't have to be me who is, hand prep cooking all of the meals for my family. It doesn't have to be me who does the laundry. What's important is that it gets done. What's important
Yeah.
is that everyone is fed. And so I think like if we can really start to reframe like how we're prioritizing things in our household and in our life and thinking about like the value of our time, which by the way is like our most, valuable resource and it's our scarcest asset,
Mhm.
um, then we can really just start to think about ways to optimize our time.
Yeah, as you're speaking on this point, I come back to kind of the mental load piece because a lot of it is our mindset, and that's impacting. It's like, and I mean, even just not having children, but I should probably outsource some things, and I have done over the years. But it's like the minute you do it, you're like, oh, like it's just like your mind relaxes. You're like, oh, I don't have to worry about that. And
Yeah.
it's like all this unnecessary pressure, and you're like, why didn't I just do
Yeah.
this before? Like, why do I, like, why do I complicate things? And I
Yeah.
think it's just the mindset that gets in the way. What are some challenges you see, like with that working moms face when it comes to managing that mental load? Like just how do you address the mind? Because I feel like the mindset is where it's at.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. So a couple things that you mentioned. One one thing that I want to like just super clarify because you just said this is like the mental load is not just the physical load or the time that you get back from outsourcing a task, right? To your point, it's not just the fact that you don't have to go to the store and spend like 30 to 60 minutes today at the grocery store. It's that if you have a list, if you have a system like a standing grocery list of the things that just need to be in your home because they're the things you eat every day or your family eats every day. And you can either you take that on, your partner takes it on, you delegate it out completely, you're no longer like it's not just that 60 minutes you're getting back. You're getting back the headspace because you're no longer thinking about like, oh no, are we out of something? What are we out of? How am I going to make time to go to the grocery store? What are the things we need? And then actually going, right? So like
Mm,
you're freeing up your headspace. And I think like that is so valuable. To your point though, like it's like, I work with so many clients at Sage House who like once they start outsourcing something, they're like, why didn't I do this a long time ago? Or they're like, I think the biggest realization, honestly, is that people learn about outsourcing or like delegating things or creating home systems and are like, wait, that's a thing. I could do that. Like my time, I could value my time at a certain, 25, 30, $35 an hour and have someone else do something for me. Like I think people don't even consider it as an option yet. So I feel like a lot of what my mission is around like educating people that like, yes, this is a thing.
mhm,
This is absolutely a thing, and it's more attainable, and it's more approachable, and it's more affordable than you think. So that kind of brings me to like, the barriers that you mentioned, which
mhm,
I think there are several barriers. Like one that we already talked about is, um, this concept of stigma. So like the stigma is oh, I should be a super mom. It seems like everyone else is doing it. So shouldn't I be able to do it too? And it's like, what would they think of me? What would someone think of me if I outsourced ooh, I did something exciting. For those of you listening, I just made fireworks happen on Zoom. That always makes me giggle when I do that. But like, what would someone think of me? I think that like we're so worried about, perception and stigma. But then you bring up another one, which is like a huge barrier is certainly budget. And like, can I afford this? Like, this sounds like a luxury.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think that's the perception anyway when I say to someone, oh, yeah, I have a house manager who does X, Y, and Z in my home. And they like, oh, their jaw drops and they're like, what? She has a what?
Mm-hmm.
Who's this rich white lady is basically like their response, what they're thinking in their head. And, for me and my family, like, first of all, we started outsourcing on living on one income in a 2-bedroom apartment in downtown Portland. Okay. My husband was starting a business. I was 8 months pregnant. I could barely touch my shoes, tie my shoes, like much less like clean floors. And I realized like, oh my gosh, this is like the moment where I really would value someone to clean my home. So that was sort of like the first thing. And then the second one was that I started doing was outsourcing meal preparation, which by the way, I think is the best ROI that you can possibly get. Because when I crunch the numbers for me, for my family, the money that we save by not wasting food, by not having to eat out, and instead what we get is like meals dropped off to our house that we eat Monday through Friday.
Mm-hmm.
We actually save money. Like legitimately, I've crunched the numbers. I've done it multiple ways. And like we save money by having someone meal prep for us. So like, I think that before people really like rule it out, like, oh, I can't afford that. Or like, oh, that sounds like a luxury I certainly couldn't afford. Like look into it. You
Mm-hmm.
know, there are people in our world, in our communities who are like looking for side hustles that are specific to like supporting families. Like they want 5 hours of being an executive assistant type person for a family assistant.
Mm-hmm.
They want, a 10-hour gig that involves meal prepping for a family and house managing or like babysitting your kids on a Friday night so you can go on a date.
Mm-hmm.
So like I think like those are really like the barriers that I see. So mindset, stigma, um, financial, and then I think the last one is really like once people get to this point and they're like, oh, okay, maybe I should look into this. Maybe I could afford this. They're like, where do I start? Like,
Mm-hmm.
where do I find someone? And that's kind of like where Sage House really comes in, where I have like a method that has worked for me multiple times, that has worked for, dozens of families and clients that I've worked with. That is like, here's how you find someone.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like it would help me as well. I'm gonna look at your website with a new lens now and look how I can optimize my life without the kids, but still, you mentioned a lot of really interesting points, and I think you're so spot on the financials. And there's a huge misconception, and to your point, because it seems like a luxury because we're not taught, we're not exposed to that. And it's to you were talking about systems as well, and I think it's so, it's like we're like, I don't need a system to manage my house, but yet you do. Like you it would help to have a system. I have a friend of mine, her husband, they have a like 6-year-old daughter, and they are the most, like, one of the most organized people, but they do everything, like, there's just super structure. So they're both like engineers by profession, so their mindset already like works like this, in a very structured way. But it really works, like creating systems and writing things down and unloading it from your mind. And so
Yes.
everybody's, like managing a household, and, and they don't use an external help, but having a system, it's free. You just, there's a
Yes.
ton of different tools and AIs people can use if they're not sure where to start. And then you can kind of grow from there. The whole meal prepping, I'm with you as well. I think that, one, in a world where we're so busy and it's so easy to eat like crap, whether we have families or not, I think meal prepping in general is just sometimes a healthier option. And and or sometimes you're just not a good cook, right? Like, so
Yeah.
you don't think about meal prep or something like that. So I've heard this before, that it's not it's not any more expensive. Sometimes you actually end up saving money, to your point, when you outsource the meal prepping. So but I think it's just, I really think, it's like it all makes sense, but it's just the idea of learning to let go of what we've been conditioned to, or how we've been conditioned to operate. I think that's what it is. And I think that's the hardest. But when you put it this way, it sounds so simple. And I really hope people go to your website and kind of look, because you have a lot of different resources and blog, and like just like a lot of information around it that I think will be super helpful to people.
Yes. Yes. And double clicking on the home systems piece.
Mm.
Um, you know, I would, so like really that is step one. So step one is making the invisible visible, getting it out of your head and getting it onto paper. And
Mhm.
um, the to your point, there are so many free resources, including mine, which is I have a quiz on my website. It's 8 questions, takes like 2 minutes. And based on your answers to this quiz, it provides a dashboard that shows you how much time you're probably spending managing your household today.
Mhm.
And then it also generates a custom task list of all of the things that are probably happening in your home so that you can start then ranking them based
Mhm.
on like the level of joy that it brings you. You can rank them based on how much time they take you. And then you can start to pick them off like, okay, if I can, and then you can work backwards from your budget, right? It's like, okay, if I can afford, if I have $100 and that's my budget this week, could that get me 4 hours, 5 hours of someone's time? And then if I had 5 hours, what are the things on this list I would offload first? And so really like but then these are systems that you don't even need to like hire someone to offload them, to your point. Like these are systems that you could just use to have initial conversations with your partner. Like, I feel like we're still so much in this, like we're not there yet. We're not there yet when it comes to division of labor and equitability in our households. And so I think like just that, and that's what I did. That's like what this all came from, is like I wrote down when I was on like my breakdown moment after having my second child, I wrote down everything I was doing to manage our household. And I literally said to my husband, hey, we need to have a meeting. I called a meeting to order. And after I went to bed, I like poured 2 glasses of wine, got out my laptop, projected my screen onto the television in our living room. And I said, look at this list. These are all the things. And I had like a column of like time, how much time it was taking. And then I like added it all up. And I'm like, this is taking 22 hours a week on average for me to manage our household. And this was like, his mind was like blown. He's
Mhm.
like, whoa, what do you mean? And I think like making me invisible visible, even if it just helps you have that conversation with your partner and like start thinking about how you're dividing the labor, it's like game changing. It's like game changing for your relationship. It can be game changing for you to just get it out of your head. Um, and so, yeah, I agree. I think like, even if just my free quiz helps,
Yeah.
like, awesome, amazing. That's my goal.
Yeah, no, it's so true, because it's a lot of it is we don't know what we don't know, and unless you go through that process, if your partner, on whether you're the husband or the wife, sometimes you don't realize what the other person is dealing with until it's like you're like, this is actually what it is. So it's like this little bit of an education that goes into place, because we don't know
Mhm.
what we don't know, and until we experience that thing, or it's point blank, like this is how many hours this is taking me, like something needs to change, it unless it's made visible, it's very difficult to address that. I can see how this is helpful to a relationship in general. I'm gonna do this with my partner, but I don't even know what I would. I don't have anything I can like pinpoint, because he's so helpful at the moment. But
That's
I'm
good.
like, but I'm sure there's something I can't. But it's like it's such a good idea. I didn't never even thought about it, and I'm super with time management and stuff like that, but it's such a great idea. And I'm sure there's things now, I'm like, my brain is like spinning. It's almost like in career development, what I advise people is like, especially when I work with project managers, I'm like, you have all the skills and tools you need to run a project full of, sometimes dozens or even more people. Apply those same skill set to your own career development, run it like a
Yes.
project, agile, etc. Right? Like, and it's the same thing here. It comes down to like time management, a little like a mini project management. So
Yes.
it's amazing how often we forget that there's so many skills we have that we apply in our jobs, we apply everywhere else, but we do not apply them in our households, in our relationships. And I think that little quiz is probably going to bring a lot of awareness. I'm going to take it as well. I don't know, hopefully it will be applicable to me, I would assume, even if I
Oh
don't have
yeah,
kids, right?
totally.
Yeah,
I mean, the
yeah.
first question basically says how many people are in my house? And it's like
Okay.
just me and a partner, me and a dog. Like
Nice.
so it's applicable to anybody. I think it's super helpful. But yes, to your point, like if we can start, running our households a little bit more like a business,
Mm-hmm.
I think that there are yeah, I think there are so many ways that we can like bring skills to that effort and to our relationships in terms of like communication, in terms of, project management and creating systems and automations. Um, so yes, couldn't agree more with you there.
Something else you mentioned that I think is important is the joy piece. So doing things that you enjoy and kind of like ranking them, can you let go of? Because I think if something brings you joy, so if you're a person that, your joy is to cook for your family,
Yeah.
then, then maybe you don't outsource that, or maybe you minimize, or maybe you outsource half of the week, for example, right? Like my partner, he loves to cook. I'm like, do
Yes.
you? Like, by all means, it brings me zero joy to cook.
Yeah.
So, and I think also understanding what brings you joy, and then outsource things that don't bring you joy, or finding ways to, I think that's important to note, because it's like, well, what if I like this thing? So it's like, well, you're gonna like some things, but not everything. So I think
Yep.
prioritizing it, that was something I thought was super super important that you mentioned.
Yeah. It's really funny you say that because I get the newsletter every week from James Clear, the
Yeah,
author of
yeah, I love
Atomic
those.
Habits,
Yep.
and his quote from today was, "Don't outsource things that bring you joy." Yeah, never outsource what you enjoy. I'm looking at the quote right now, which I
Yeah.
think is so true. But yeah, and let me give you examples of how that plays out for me in
Yeah.
my life. So you see these plants behind me. Like I am a plant freak. Like I love plants. I love greenery. I love it around me. And I really love taking care of my own plants. Like I just love it. And so that's something that like, yeah, it does take me like 30 minutes to 60 minutes per week to take care of all of my plants in my house. But like it really brings me joy. So like
Mm-hmm.
that is not a task that my house manager takes on. However, like I cannot stand getting gas. I don't like stopping to get gas. Probably because I'm always on such like a tight timeline. And I'm like, oh no, now I have to stop and get gas. So like that is something that's like perpetually on her to-do list when she's out and about running errands or grocery shopping or whatever. She fills up the cars with gas. That's amazing. That brings me so much satisfaction that I don't have to stop for gas. And then there are things that I like am 50-50 on, like you said, like meal prepping. I love cooking. I love it. But you know what I realized as a parent is like, I love cooking when I can like pour myself a glass of wine, put on some
Mm-hmm.
music, like really just, it's more of like a meditative experience for me to like make some food, like amazing, incredible, tasty food for my family. But I don't like it when my kids get home from daycare at 5 PM and they're screaming at me because they're so hungry that they need to eat like 5 minutes ago, and like that makes it not an enjoyable experience for me to be cooking. So like that's why during the week I have food that's prepped and it's ready to just be reheated so that I can feed my hungry monsters. But then on the weekends, I don't like, I feel like it brings so much more joy to us on the weekends to really plan what we're going to cook. Like I get the kids involved. We make homemade pizzas. We really make it more of like a thing
Mm.
because it's just like that much more special because like that's our weekend activity and that's something we do together. So yes, like I think you can blend all of these things and like you can figure out like what are things I don't like to do? What are the things I do love to do? And like how do I again, this all everything goes back to time. Like how do I maximize my time?
Yeah. I love it. I love it. I'm so inspired just talking to you. I'm gonna optimize myself after this, and I think
Yes.
a lot of my listeners will too. I'm curious, just any kind of if you want to share some stories from some of your clients or people who have kind of followed the Sage House methodology, and how has it been helpful to them?
Yeah, totally. I mean, gosh, I have helped so many families that are in, different stages and seasons of life. So, I'll give you like one example of a client of mine who had a total aha moment because they are both dual income working household and they both one works like East Coast is on the West Coast, but works East Coast hours. And then um my client had she ran her own consulting business, a marketing business, and she had clients in Israel. So like think about these time zones. So like
Mm,
they realized that in order to make both of their jobs work at the time, like they really needed help in the mornings from like 5:30 a.m. to like 9 a.m. to like get their kids up, get their kids out the door, pack lunches, pack bags, take kids to daycare. And it literally, like, she almost thought, like, I can't take on this client. And then I
mm,
was like, no, you can take on this client because I bet you there is someone out there who would love to work a 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. hustle a couple days a week so that you can have this client. And like, literally, she was like, "Oh, yeah, you're right." Like, I think she just ruled it out because she thought, "Oh, who would want that? Like, that's not a job. Oh, that's too early." I don't know. Anyway, she ended up finding someone and, like, she could then take on this client, so she was making more money and she was happy and she was furthering her career and business, and they had this amazing human being who was, like, coming and helping them take kids to school, like, clean up the mess from the kitchen. Anyway, so that was, like, a huge success story, and then the other one is, one of the services I provide to clients, I only do a couple of these a month, but there is a C-level executive she's a chief revenue officer at a technology company based out of the Bay Area. She called me a few weeks ago. She's got high school and college age kids, so she's kind of like, very much back in like the career focus. But she said, "Hey Kelly, like I need your help. I need a house manager like yesterday because I need someone meal prep plus house management. Like I need someone 15 hours to 20 hours a week to make food, drop it off to my home on Mondays, and then someone to like walk my dogs in the afternoons, run errands for me, drop off Amazon packages, you get the idea." And so I was like, cool. I bet there's someone out there who's perfect for you. And
mm,
then, sure enough, 2 weeks later, I just placed a candidate with her and her family and she's working with them. So that was like more of a direct placement where like I did all of the recruiting and the work
mm,
because she was like, "Hey, I'm just too busy. I'm, running a company and I just need you to find the person for me." So sometimes I do that. And that was a huge success story too. But, I think no matter what season of life you're in, it all goes back to like what are your priorities? Like, are you growing your career right now? Like, are you taking a career pause, but you're still really involved in your kids' schools and activities, and like you just need more support. Like, where are you in your season of life, and how can you maximize that and also like maximize the support that you need?
mm. And I think there's probably more and more people that are doing gig work out there. I mean, that has skyrocketed over the last several years, and there's a lot of people from all sorts of backgrounds, and some they're just don't have a traditional 9 to 5, don't want that, and just looking for those gigs. So I can see how that can be not only beneficial for the family but also for the economy and those individuals as well. Like it's a whole like societal thing, like a community thing, and especially if you can obviously find someone who's trustworthy and build that relationship and so on. I think it's I think it's beautiful. I have another friend of mine, and they've had like a house manager but slash nanny who lives with them,
Yeah.
and it's been 7 years now, and she always jokes. She said, if and I said, what are you gonna do when she retires? And she's like, my husband and I are probably gonna get a divorce. She's like, we
Yeah.
can't function without her, she's joking, of course, but it's like that's how she's like part of the family, and it's much more affordable than people think. And I always, because I'm sure people listening are like, yeah, but like that's a luxury. And I think one, there's a lot of free things you can do today, and just by going on your website, that's first. But then also there's, I think, opportunities for different budgets. And if you look at, to your point, like how much you're actually spending on X, Y, and Z, and where you can allocate some of that money and repurpose it to things that actually optimize your life and ultimately make you make more money in the future, especially if you're
Yeah.
trying to free up time for your career or business, right? Like I think we think short term and very today versus like a whole
Investment.
picture.
It's an
Yes,
investment.
yes, an investment. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, no, excellent, excellent point. So I'm curious your, hopes for Sage House, what are you looking to do in the next 6 to 12 months? How do you see it growing? I mean, it sounds amazing, and I want to tell everybody about it, but like,
Yeah.
what are your aspirations for it?
Yeah, well, first, I like so appreciate your support and just validating all of these things. I have loved this chat. I think, for me, like this just goes back to my goal is to help busy moms get the support that they deserve. And so, I'm just really trying to get the word out there that Sage House exists. I actually am launching May 1st, so next week, I am launching a free program. Depends on when this episode goes live, but I am launching a free 5-day course May 1st that is basically walking through a lot of the things that we just discussed. So really like my goal is to get these ideas out there and start doing a lot of the education. I'm also going to be launching this summer, due to popular demand. I've had so many moms who have said, hey, I've taken your digital course and it's really fantastic, but like I kind of need more accountability and structure around creating my own home systems and kicking off a hiring and recruiting process to like find a meal prep chef or a house manager. And so I am doing a 6-week cohort program with women who want to do just that. And so that'll be kicking off just after July 4th. And really like my goal is to just like have the greatest impact I possibly can. I want moms, I want busy professionals to like reclaim their time because I think like, what it all comes back to is like, am I spending time on what's meaningful to me? And, I think it's really just important to come back to like, what are your core values? Like, what brings you joy? What fills your cup? And so that's really my goal.
Before I ask you my last question that I ask all of my guests, where can people get in touch? Is your website's the best place? LinkedIn? Where do you hang out at the most?
Yeah, I would say I hang out mostly on Instagram. So I would say Instagram at my Sage House. House is spelled Haus. Super cool and trendy house. Um, and I would say, yeah, Instagram or my website. There's a contact on my website. And yeah, I'd be, happy to, my email is always open. I love hearing from anybody about anything, even if it's like, hey, heard what you said, but I still don't know how it applies to me. Like I'm so happy to have that conversation.
That's awesome. And I'll make sure to put all that in the show notes so people, in case they're driving or not able to write this down or access it right now, you will have access to it in the show notes. The last question I ask all of my guests, which is, what is one question you wish people would ask themselves more often?
Oh gosh. I think the question I would like people to ask themselves is, how am I spending my time? How am I valuing my own time? I think is really it. Like, I guess question one is like, do I value my time? And then it's like,
Mhm.
how am I showing up for myself to show and prove to myself that I do truly value my own time?
Mm, beautiful. Well, Kelly, thank you so much, and thank you for the work that you're doing. And hope to chat with you again as this your business is going to grow, which I'm sure it will. It's amazing. I think it's just a matter of letting people know about it. So kudos to you for creating something really awesome.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been really fun. And you too, you're doing amazing things. And I'm happy to be just in your network, in your orbit.